Hey everyone, this is Kathy from K-Dale Handmade. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be working on a project that I've had on my sewing table or under my sewing table. It's one of those whips that I have had forever. I've had it for over a year, probably have had this over 2 years. And I think I'm going to do it every year at holiday time so that I can have it as one of my, holiday decorations that I pull out, and I just never do. So today we're going to be working on this, getting another whip finished. So here's what we're going to be doing. A jelly roll rug. If you've never made a jelly roll rug, they're really fun. They look great on your floor. This one I'm using is a jelly roll from Moda. It's called Peppermint Bark. So you have that. You also have this Jerry's Jelly Roll Jig. And then I have a roll of cotton batting jelly roll rug. This is 2 1/4 inches jig and the Moda jelly roll, and that's all we need. So I will link in the video description for everything that I use in the video today, which is mainly just these 3 and then my sewing machine. So I will make sure all of that is included, and let's go ahead and get this rip this whip. Jelly roll unwrapped, you will have this. These are 2 1/2 inch strips. And what we need to do now is we need to put them together. We need to sew them together. So how you do that, we're going to make one gigantic strip, one long strip. So I'm just going to go right in order, and I'm going to take one and lay it down this way, take the other one right sides together. So each one of these will be right sides together, and I'm going to lay it like that. So you have one this way, then the next one will be down. Again, right sides together. And then from this corner, we're going to start here and sew across to this corner on the diagonal. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to let this first one drop down. This will be my second one now. Come down to the other end. Again, right side up. I'm going to grab the next strip and put this one down. Right sides down. So again, these are right sides together. And then I'm going to come to this edge, this corner, and sew down on the diagonal to this corner. All right, and then it is just that same process for the entire rest of the jelly roll to make our one gigantic strip. So I'm going to speed this up because it'll be really boring for you to watch me do every single one of these. And I'm just offsetting the selvage edges here just a little bit. But I will go ahead and finish all of these. Okay, whew, done. Got all of those sewn together. So this is our giant pile, our gigantic strip. Now what we need to do is at each point where let me grab my scissors here real quick. So at each point where we sewed the strips together, we need to trim off the seam allowance. So just trim this little corner off so you have your standard 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then you're going to press the seams open. So you're going to trim off all the pieces. I'll probably press the seams open at the ironing board. I think that would be easier than trying to do it here and then again at the sewing or at the ironing board. So next thing we need to do, and I won't force you to watch me do this, is cut all these little edges off so we have our standard 1/4 inch seam allowance on each strip where they connect. Then we're going to take it to the ironing board and we're going to iron the entire strip all the way along the length flat. Anytime we get to a seam, we're going to press it open, continue ironing, coming to the next seam, press that one open all the way to the end. Okay, now that I have all of that ironed and folded, I kind of folded it back on itself to make this little stack just to keep it from getting twisted. Since it is so big and so long, it easily gets twisted. So I wanted to do this just to help with that. Now you are going to need, like I said, your roll of cotton batting. This is 2 1/4 inches wide. And then, here, let me just take this little plastic off the end here. There we go. So you have your strip of fabric that you sew together, your strip of cotton batting, and then you have your Jerry's Jelly Roll jig. So you have this little piece that looks like this, and then you have, there's 2 included in the package, but you have this little piece of plastic. It's smooth on this side and a little rougher on this side. So what we want to do is start with, and I'm probably going to be moving this around as I go, but I'm going to come down here a little bit down from the selvage edge, and as you can see, there's about 1/8 of an inch gap on either side of the jelly roll from the batting. So we want to make sure that this batting is centered on our strip. And then we're going to take the piece of plastic and with the rougher side down towards the fabric, we're going to take our jig and feeding it in. There we go, once you get it started. So what it does, we're going to keep pulling until we can pull the plastic out. So what it does is it just folds the fabric and the batting into the center. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down this entire strip to make our rope. So what I'm going to do, and you can always do this at the sewing machine, but I'm going to do mine all at once. I'm just going to do this whole step once, and then I will go to the sewing machine to sew it. But you could, if you wanted to, once you had it this far, we're going to sew down this open folded edge here. We're going to sew down as about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And so like I said, you could just do this and do it with your fingers at the machine. But for me personally, I would rather just have this part done, and then I'm not like juggling 3 pieces, you know what I mean? Like I won't have the strip and the jelly roll and the jig and be trying to fold these in half again and make sure that my needle catches everything and I've caught all the layers, and like it's just too much. So I'm going to go down this whole length and make sure that your fabric stays centered over your jig. Your binding stays centered over your... See, this is why I don't want to do this at the sewing machine. So let me back up. There we go. Let me come down. There we go. That's better. All right, so let me re-clip this. Yes, perfect example of why I don't want to do this at the sewing machine, because I think for me, it would just cause much more frustration. I would rather do this part here, get it all clipped and prepped, and then I can just go and like just whip right down the seam. So like I said, I will go ahead and finish clipping this entire length, and then I will come back to show you the next step. Okay, well, I'm out of clips. If you saw, this bowl was completely full of clips. When I started, I have all of this that has been folded and clipped, and I still have this much left. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew as much as I have done to this point, so that I have clips again, and then I will continue to the end. Like I said, when we're sewing here on this strip, this is where we fold it into the center, and we are going to stitch at about 1/8 of an inch right down this edge. Make sure you catch both sides, and we're just going to sew all the way down. So I will finish all of that, and then I will come back once I have everything clipped, folded, and sewn to make our fabric rope. All right, I have all of this sewn. Oh my word. This is a lot and it is very long. I will say that to sew just along the seam here all the way to the whole length of this, it took me 3 bobbins. So just to be aware, make sure you load up several bobbins before you do this so that you don't have to stop in the middle. All right, so now that we have this big spaghetti pile of fabric rope, what we're going to do is just, I'm going to roll it, make a little ball in my hand. So just like as if you were making ribbon, I'm going to try to, sorry, if you were making yarn, I should say. I'm going to roll this into a ball and try to keep it untwisted as I do it. So I will roll this all the way up, and that will make at least working with it in the next step a little bit easier if we have it somewhat contained. So I'm just going to keep wrapping this around until I get my whole pile of spaghetti rolled into a ball. All right, there we go. Our fabric rope is all balled up, and now we are ready for the next step. I will say that this is probably a good spot for a break. If you need a break, this, just to get to this step, took me several hours, probably 4-ish hours, to sew all the strips together, put the binding on, and sew down that strip. So it was a long process, somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. So if you do need a break, this is a good spot for a break. And then the next spot, or the next step we'll be doing, is setting up our machine so that we can actually start to sew our rug and put it all together. Okay, I am back, and as you might have noticed, the ball might look a little different. I realized after I got it all wound up that I actually want the lighter color to be on the inside, so that's the part that I wanted to wind last. So I just had to rewind the ball from the other end. So I did that last night, decided to just take a break and come back at it this morning. So now that we have all of this done, next all we need to do is to sew it together. So I'm going to change the camera angle over to the sewing machine. I'm going to try to get it a little bit closer to where the needle is so that you can see how it gets started. Starting the Jelly Roll rug is probably the hardest, trickiest, not really tricky, but you have to be real careful and take your time to get it started really well. And then as you have that really good foundation base layer, base couple rows, that just makes the rest so much easier. So let's go over to the machine. Okay, a couple notes before we get started. As you can see, I have these plastic trays. They're just paper trays that you can get like from a craft store or an office supply store. I just have them flipped upside down. You can use board games, you can use books, anything. If you don't have one of those extension tables that you can put onto your machine. You can just stack it up, use old textbooks, things like that. Stack it up to try to make it the same height as your bed of your sewing machine. Now mine isn't exactly right, but I think it'll be just fine. Basically, you just want to have it be as level as possible so that as you're making it, your rug isn't kind of like going up and down and getting little wonky waves and curves in it that you do not want later. Since obviously this is a rug, we want it to lay flat on the floor and so nobody trips over it, right? So a little side tip there. Now, as you're starting your rug, what you need to think about is the shape that you want it. So I want mine to be a little bit more of an oblong shape. So how you start it in the middle is going to determine the shape of your rug. If you wanted a round rug, obviously you would do things here in the middle to just start it going, you know, in the center and then just round and round and round. If you wanted it to be more kind of oval shape, you could have a shorter starting here. So the longer you have it here, it will be longer this way and more narrow this way. So more like rectangle shape. If you started it shorter, then obviously it would not be as wide and it would be a little taller. Or you know what I'm saying? It wouldn't be, it would change the shape. So to have a nice kind of oblong version, which is what I want, I think I'm going to do around somewhere between 15 and 18 inches. Let me just grab a ruler real quick and see how long this measurement is here. Okay, so I just went to my sewing table behind me since there's a ruler right on that table, and that was only about 13 inches. So what I'm going to do is I measured 18 inches. Actually, I think it's probably closer to 17, but whatever, you get the idea. So what we want to do is we just want to fold it in half, and we're going to start here. Now, as you are making this, you want the piece that's attached to your ball to be on the right side. So that's how you know, if you do that, that's how you know that as your rug grows, it's going to grow out to the left and it's not going to grow this way and get all jumbled up because that's just not going to work. So make sure that your long rope piece is off to the right. Now, a couple of things, machine setup wise, we do need to switch to a zigzag stitch. So I'm just going to leave my rope right here for a second. Come over to the machine. We need to switch to a zigzag stitch, and you want it to be as, I'll say, as wide as possible so that you're sure that you're catching both sides of your rope. So you don't want a very narrow zigzag here and risk maybe not catching one side. So I would recommend going anywhere between 5 to 7 millimeters wide, and then height wise around 3 millimeters. That will give you a little gap in between. You could always change it as you go if you don't like it. If you want your zigzag to be a little more dense, you can shrink the distance between, and then I still would keep it that wide so that you don't risk not catching it. Okay, so I will set my machine up. All right, I'm going to try 7 millimeter. And what I'm going to do is just start here. So I'm butting here. I'm going to zoom in on the camera angle a bit so it's a little easier to see. Okay, hopefully that is a little better. But you want to start, I'm going to start down a little bit. It's pretty thick up here, so you don't want to start right at the end, but you can start in a little bit and then start your stitching. Back stitch, and I'm going to back stitch all the way to the end there, and then I'll come back again and go forward. Okay, and as you're going, you just want to make sure again that you're catching both sides of your rope. And then once you get to the end here, I'm going to take this end and I'm just going to fold it over. So it's folding over this raw end here of the end of our rope. So just folding it over a little bit like that. And then this part can get real thick, so I'm going to go slow. Okay, and then I just backstitched a couple times, came back to the front. Actually, I'm going to put this ball on the ground. It's fine if it stays down there. It's not going to go anywhere. I mean, it might roll around a teeny bit, but not a big deal. Okay, so now we're going to zigzag across. And then I'm going to take the rope and we're going to flip it under. So, you know, on the other side we flipped it up. Now we're going to flip it under. And then we're going to come just to the end of that. Again, I'm just going to back stitch a couple. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it. And then now we're going to go down and sew this together. So on this side now, we have the rounded edge, the rounded edge. Let me move over a bit. There we go. Actually, my needle was over too much, a little bit too much, so I'm going to back stitch just to make sure I get it caught right there. All right, and as we come down to this side, now we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other side. So that's going to keep it so that it's consistent. We have that nice rounded kind of shape here at the end of our beginning rows. And that's going to help us to build the depth for our rug so that it's easier for us. To start making that shape. And again, you don't have to do these back stitches at the ends. I'm just doing it for my own peace of mind to know that I really caught everything. All right, so I folded that one under again on this side. And then turning it again. And now we're going to go down this side. So you want to, as you're sewing this, you want to make sure that you have some slack on this so it's not pulling too much, because that's going to make the shape of your rug go wonky. And you just want to keep the two edges butted up nicely right next to each other. Okay, and now as we go around, we are going to actually, I think before I get too far along, I am actually going to, let me think here. I'm thinking I want, how am I going to do this? I want the rounded edge. So I should have flipped when I started it, I should have made it the opposite way, which I wasn't quite thinking about. So what I want is the rounded edge on the outside of my rug. So when I get to the end, I'll have this nice piece on the outside. And I think if I do it here in the middle, I'm just going to flip it, and I don't think it'll be too obvious. I hope not anyway. So I'm going to do it around the corner here. Okay, I don't think that will be too bad. I think it'll just end up looking like a bit of a fold, and we've done these folds here in the beginning anyway, so I don't think you'll really notice in the end result. And then in a few rounds, we're going to take this over to the ironing board and give it a good steam press. So I think, again, pushing that down with the steam press is also going to make it pretty much invisible to anyone who doesn't know. But if you end up coming over to my house and you see this rug, don't be like, oh, there's that spot where you flipped your rope. All right, and then as you come to the corners, especially in these beginning rounds, just go slow. Your rope will get a little bit scrunched up in these corners, and that's okay. It's okay for these first rounds because, like I said, we're going to take it to the ironing board and press it, give it a steam press, so that should help take out any of these weird shapes that we might get. So you can see as this one's wanting to curl up on me. All right, and then we're just going to continue on in the same fashion. Okay, at this point I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11-ish rows, 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. So I am going to backstitch a couple. And I'm going to remove it from the sewing machine. We can take a look at how our rug is looking so far. As you can see, I do have a couple little here. It wants to curve a bit. So it's a good idea every 10-ish, 10, 12 rows to take this off of your machine, take it over to your iron, give it a press. If you have some spray starch, let's see, I have one, I can't remember what it's called right now, but I will get it and show it to you. But you can spray it on there really good. Use a steam press, press it down flat, make sure it's on a flat surface, and then let it cool so that it will hold the shape that you pressed it in. Because if you press it and then it's still warm and you come over here and you start doing stuff with it, it's going to end up being wonky. So I'm going to take this over to the iron. I'm going to give it a good press. I will grab that spray starch that I'm using so I can show you what that is, and then come back here and we will continue building this rug. Okay, here is my pressed piece. If you can see, I don't know if you can tell, it pressed out nice and flat and it's laying really nice. Now the other thing that's good about this is you always have little spots where you can stop and double check your bobbin because you're going to use several bobbins for this one. And mine is getting low, so I'm probably going to have to stop before I get to that next 10 to 12 more rows, especially as they get longer. So I'll probably only get a couple rounds and then I'll have to stop and replace my bobbin. But doing that little kind of pause to press and check your bobbin is never a bad thing, right? All right, so now that we have that done, we are going to continue for a few more rounds. All right, in my case, I did not get another 10 or 12 rows before I noticed that my bobbin is pretty much out of thread. So I'm going to replace my bobbin and continue on. Okay, bobbin refilled. Before I start back, I realized that I forgot to tell you about this spray starch that I'm using. So this is Mary Ellen's Mary Ellen's Best Press, the clear starch and sizing alternative. This one's Lavender Fields. It smells really good, works really good, and I got mine from a local sewing shop, and this is great stuff if you're looking for some form of, if you don't have any and you're looking for a spray starch to use for this project. So I wound 2 bobbins. I'm not sure that's going to be enough. I'm probably going to have to wind more, but that's okay. And I'll just keep an eye on it and off we go. All right, I'm going to pause here for just a second and say that as your rug continues to grow, as you will notice, you probably have seen the wall is right here. So this rug is obviously going to be bigger than my space here. So I think the next time I stop, let's see, we'll see how much further I can get. But I'm going to end up pulling my table away from the wall a bit so that I have a little bit more space. I also have right here off camera, which you can't see, I have my serger. I'm going to move that as well to give me a little bit more space this way too. So I am going to continue on, and then, like I said, I will be stopping in a minute so that I can press these new rows, and then I will also be moving my table. All right, here seems like a good spot to stop for now. My bobbin thread is almost out. I'm going to take this over, give this a good press, double check to make sure all my stitches are looking good. I haven't missed any seams or anything like that all the way around, that I'm still happy with everything, and then I will be back. All right, so I wanted to stop here for a second. One, you probably saw my tray fall behind, so I had to pick that up. But also I wanted to just say that as you're working with this, it does get kind of bulky and heavy and awkward. So if you are a quilter, let me put this on the right hand here. If you have quilter's gloves, now these are, let me show you what these are. They only cover my thumb and finger, first 2 fingers. These are called Regis Grip. They are quilter's gloves, but they have this little rubber grip on them, and it makes it so much easier for you to be able to move your fabric around, and it takes off some of the strain of your shoulder, so you don't have to strain as much. Because this gets to be, I have issues with my shoulders, which is why I don't really quilt like I used to. I'm obviously into bag making now, so but thankfully I still have my little quilter's gloves, and so that's going to help me just kind of push it, since my skin wants to slide on the fabric, but the quilter's gloves grip it really well. So if you have that for this project, I would recommend, especially as it gets larger. All right, well, I forgot to check the bobbin, so right there I'm going to have to go back and tack double stitch down that area. Now I did want to say, as I was sewing around, there was one little area right here. I got a little off track, so I didn't quite catch this part right here. I'm not going to worry about that. I mean, it's nothing to stress out about. Obviously, you could unpick all these if you wanted to, if that was your thing. I am not going to do that. I'm just going to come back after I obviously replace my bobbin. I'm going to come back, do a couple of tack stitches here, go over that spot, tack stitch here, and you won't even notice. This rug is really great. This project is really great for being forgiving of mistakes and little skips like that, because you don't really see it, because it's kind of designed that way anyway. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to worry about that. Like I said, I'll just come back and run over that piece again. And then let me show you this. All of this sewing we've done so far, this is still how much ball size we have left to sew. We're getting there though. We're getting there. It's gonna look, I'm really excited. We're getting into the greens and the darker colors, so I'm really excited to see when it's done. So yeah, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna press this, and then while that is cooling, I will refill my bobbins and be back. All right, I am back. 2 more bobbins wound, so hopefully, I don't know if that will be enough to finish this project, but I have 2 more wound and ready to go. The one thing I did want to say is, because this rug is getting larger, that there's nothing that says that you have to make the entire jelly roll into one rug. You could make a roll, make that giant strip of fabric rope like I did, and then cut it in half and make 2 rugs. You could make smaller ones, maybe for your kitchen table, like a table runner type thing, which it would be obviously much longer than 18 inches, and you could do it that way. There's so many things you could do. You can make little mug rugs. So there's nothing that says you have to make this into one giant rug. That's just what I'm doing for this project. But there are lots of options that you have. So think of, or don't be, I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't be scared of trying to make this project. Especially if you have shoulder issues or you don't have a lot of space. You always could make this in a smaller size. Okay, believe it or not, we are at the end of our rope, literally. We're at the end of our rope. So to finish this off, what we want to do, I'm going to come a little bit closer here towards the end. And what we want to do is we just want to tuck this under far enough so that we're not going to see the end of this strip, but I still want it to be tapered gently. You know, you don't want it to be an extreme like right angle in. You still want it to be tapered so it's not quite so obvious. And then I'm going to come to the end here. I'm going to back stitch several times here just to make sure that this is nice and locked in place. All right, so there is that nice curve right there in the end. You're not even going to really notice it. On the back side, what we will come and do now is, well, you have 2 options. You can trim this off, or you can come in here with some hand stitching and sew this part down. I think what I'm going to do, since my end comes over enough to where this line, this like the second line in, I'm just going to come over and do a couple zigzag stitches right here at this end. And that tacks that down right there. So I don't have to worry about that coming loose, coming through to the front side. I won't have any like raw edges here on the back because I finished this off when I was making the rope. So now what I need to do, I'm going to take it over to the iron, give it a good final press, let it lay nice and flat since I was folding it up and everything while I was sewing it. So I will do that, and then I will be back to show you the final full rug. All right, are you ready for the final reveal? Here is my jelly roll rug. I absolutely love how it turned out. Like I said, it does get a little bit to be a little bit of a struggle for your shoulders. So I highly recommend using quilter's gloves if you have that. Make sure your space is clear all the way around you, and that will help with moving the material as well. You might have seen me use my left hand to help guide that as it got really big. It was just a lot of weight, so I needed to have that extra arm to like pull it around so I could keep the seams together with my right hand and help guide with my left. But like I said, there's nothing that says that you have to do something this large. But this is the size that you would make and the shape if you used one whole jelly roll. So, all right guys, I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have another whip completed, another rip to whip. Job done. Yay for that, right? Yay for getting things done. All right, if you enjoyed this video tutorial, please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that little bell notification so that you know next time I have a video drop on my channel. I truly appreciate your support, and it really does help me to grow my channel. All right, I guess that's it. I hope you have a great day and have fun sewing.